Hello and welcome to the Working Tools Podcast. Today we'll be interviewing Right Worshipful Brother Clint Brown, Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Washington.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our opinions and thoughts are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions, either here on YouTube or on our Facebook page. We'd also appreciate a thumbs up and especially any comments on our videos.
I'm Appel, and welcome to the Working Tools Podcast. I'm here with Worshipful Brother David Chung of the Grand Lodge of British Columbia in the Yukon, Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth, also of Grand Lodge of Washington, and Right Worshipful Brother Clint Brown, Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Washington. Clint, thanks for coming out today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me today.
So, we were excited that we get this opportunity. We're trying to line up an interview also with the Grand Secretary of BC and the Yukon so we can compare and contrast. But we figured we'd give you first dibs and get to plant the flag of Grand Secretary-dom here. So.
All right. Well, since I'm the relatively new kid on the block, I guess that's fair, right?
So I guess to start things off, what is it that the Grand Secretary of Washington does on a day-to-day basis?
Well, there's a lot that the Grand Secretary does. I mean, the Grand Secretary is primarily the interface with other grand jurisdictions throughout the world for the Grand Lodge of Washington. So I have a lot of interface with other Grand Secretaries and do a lot of correspondence, especially for brothers who are traveling to other jurisdictions or internationally. I generally do. The Secretary will send a certificate of good standing, but I have to send a certificate saying that that lodge is in fact a lodge under our jurisdiction, and I do a lot of letters to other jurisdictions introducing them to the brethren who will be visiting that jurisdiction. I also do correspondence in conjunction with the Grand Master. We get a lot of requests. For example, today I received 3 requests for dispensation to temporarily move charters for lodges to different locations to hold their installation or for other types of dispensation from lodges as well. And then I do receive bylaws for the lodges and the Temple Corporation bylaws changes and everything. Review those and make sure that those go out to the proper committees so that they can review them, approve them as required, and get them to the Grand Master for a signature. So that's kind of the general, a lot of the general day-to-day stuff. Plus, I answer phones around here just like everybody else. If somebody's not here, like today, our office manager Lynn is out sick, so. A lot of times I'm answering phones and answering questions about the code and about procedures.
As a secretary of my lodge, I'm always a little surprised when I call and you're the one who answers the phone. I figured you're off doing lofty things, but.
Well, I'm usually here. I usually get here between 7 and 7:30 in the morning. That's when I get most of the work done, because usually the rest of the day I'm either on the phone or in meetings. So I usually try to get here around 7:30 so that by 9 o'clock when the phones start ringing, I can start answering the brothers' questions.
Excellent. Now I know when to call. Thanks.
So basically, you're a fancy paper pusher, is what you're really saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
Problem solver, fire protractor, paper pusher.
I like to say I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none, or a chief cook and bottle washer around here. I told the staff when I was elected, I said, I'm not going to I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do. And so when something needs to be done, if they need envelopes stuffed, if they need the printer or something, or the copier worked on, hey, I roll up my sleeves just like everybody else and do that. But I view this position as we're the customer service arm of the fraternity. We're here to help the lodges and help the brethren of the jurisdiction move forward and do things that benefit the fraternity and them.
Yeah, in our jurisdiction, everything that when we want to communicate with other lodges, our lodge secretaries are supposed to contact the Grand Lodge secretary, and then they contact the other lodge. And I always thought that was just some silly make-work project for our Grand Secretary, and didn't understand why. But I guess you also maintain a central database of everything. So if they're looking at a prospect that's joining that was a member of another lodge, and you as the Grand Secretary would have all the notes on his history from that other lodge, and the fact whether he's properly demitted or not, and things like that. So very valuable position, I actually came to learn.
Right. So there is a method to the kind of the madness. I mean, I know it seems like there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, but the first question is the person who is calling me actually a Mason? Am I talking to somebody who is actually a Mason that is in good standing? We get a lot of very interesting calls around here, and I'm because of privacy concerns and everything, I'm reluctant to give out any information on anybody. So we need to know, first of all, who we're dealing with. And so I've been in this position for a little over a year, but I've developed relationships with, especially out here on the West Coast, with a lot of the Grand Secretaries, but even Grand Secretaries as far away as Delaware and New York and everything like that. I mean, we have regular conversations because you do have brothers that are traveling and that are looking to join other lodges, come into this jurisdiction from other jurisdictions, but also vice versa. So there needs to be some sort of communication between the Grand Lodges so that we know we are actually dealing with Brother Masons who are in good standing and who are who they say they are. You'd be surprised, we get a number of brothers who come and have been dropped in, we find out have been dropped in PD, non-payment of dues, or have been suspended from other jurisdictions who want to join a lodge within our jurisdiction. Well, it's important that we have that information moving forward.
Is your video cam on something mounted off to the left of your computer screen?
It's mounted on one of my. I've got two computer screens here, so
okay.
It's mounted on
there because you're looking at a different one, and I can see.
Am I looking better here?
Yeah, there we go.
I'm looking over here. You guys are over here on the side of my screen, so I'm kind of looking at you guys. So another odd question, because it's never made any sense to me. You mentioned the letter of introduction. When a member is going to travel abroad, you provide them with that letter of introduction. Now, my experience in traveling, I never really have a particular plan to go and visit any particular lodge. My hope is that when I go somewhere, my wife actually lets me have the time to go, and so I never know if I'm going to go to a particular lodge or be close to another one, so I just go knock on the door. And I've never been, turned away. I've been examined and, proved my dues card and things like that. But I've never really understood that, needing that letter of introduction when I have a dues card and I'm proficient. So some jurisdictions, first of all, some jurisdictions don't even issue dues cards anymore. which is especially from what I found over. Sorry about that. Somebody wants in the front door. That's our doorbell ringer. What I found over in Europe is there's quite a few of those jurisdictions that don't even issue dues cards anymore. But and you don't have to have a letter of introduction from the Grand Secretary. It's not required. But a lot of brothers just want one to go along. It kind of smooths the waters when they go in. They know that this, actually is an official letter from the Grand Lodge, and that they're bringing, our letters include that they're bringing fraternal greetings on whoever the Grand Master is, etc. Now, it's also interesting. I have some brothers who say, I want to visit Lodge X, Lodge Y, and Lodge Z, and I want to visit them on these dates. And so I will include that, specifically in their letter of introduction. Some brothers I have two brothers from a lodge here that are visiting Israel in October. They don't know which lodges they're going to visit. They don't know what's available. So I just sent one to the Grand Secretary of Israel, and I said, these brothers will be visiting your grand jurisdiction between these dates, and please extend them the Masonic courtesies that you would extend a brother from Washington. It's not necessary, but it's an added little touch that we like to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I didn't know I could ask for just a broad one that says, "Hey, I'm going to go to that jurisdiction," and I don't really know which lodge I'm going to be close to. So I like that idea of being able to just have one sent to the Grand Secretary of that jurisdiction, like for example Cuba, right?
Right.
I mean, there's 8 lodges in every town, so how do you know which one you're going to first, right?
Well, the other thing is, and I've had several brothers that have inquired, and I've had to say, I'm sorry, but we don't recognize that jurisdiction that you're traveling to. And many instances, the reason is not because they're irregular or anything like that. It's simply because they haven't asked us for recognition. And so there's kind of a protocol that goes along with seeking recognition from other Grand Lodges. So
very cool.
So you mentioned that you've been Grand Secretary for a little over a year, and how long is the average Grand Secretary's tenure? I know we had one who was for like 15 years or so. Is that common? Is it usually 2 years?
I think it is more common to have a longer tenure. I haven't gone to check this out, but I was having a conversation with the Grand Historian about 4 or 5 months ago, and he informed me that I was the 14th Grand Secretary in the state of Washington. Washington has been around since 1858. So you do the math. There's a whole lot more. We have a whole lot more Grand Secretary, or a whole lot more Grand Masters than we've had Grand Secretaries. So
sounds like a lifetime appointment.
Well, it's a necessary job, and it's a job that I really enjoy. But there is a lot of travel, and there's a lot of work involved.
Well, it's pretty good, actually, full-time job. Then it's. I hope it pays as well as most other full-time jobs. It's. I know the Masonic wages are very handsome and frequent. So I hope it's more rewarding emotionally for you.
So I will tell you one of the first, I guess it was a really nice end to a day. One day that we had been working with a lodge that was actually having a lot of trouble. Their building was behind on their taxes and everything, and they were kind of didn't know what to do. And the last year, Most Worshipful James Kendall and I went and met with the officers of that lodge, and we sat down and we came up with a plan. And so one night I was traveling over to Eastern Washington, and I had Right Worshipful Chris Kaufman and I were traveling together, and we had stopped in a restaurant in Yakima, and there was a brother that I had never met him before, but he was one of the officers of that lodge, and I just happened to have my Grand Lodge shirt on with my name on it. And he came up and he said, "Are you the Grand Secretary?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, I'm the brother from this lodge, and I just want to thank you. You guys could have, easily left us to our own devices, or, Grandmaster could have pulled our charter, and instead you helped us, and you helped us dig out of a hole to where we can now get our building sold, and we can, move on and get things right with the lodge, because they also wanted to consolidate with another lodge." And he said, "I just really appreciate that." And that meant a lot to me, because that's the way I view the Grand Secretary is, and the Grand Lodge officers. I mean, we're here to try to help. We're not sometimes I have to say to the brothers, "Sorry, you can't do that. You have to look at the code," and I don't write the code. It's like I was telling David earlier, there's ways that you can go about changing the code, but it's not just an arbitrary thing that we go, "Sorry, you can't do that." I don't like to be the guy that says, "I'm sorry, you can't do that." I like to be the guy that can help work with the team and come up with solutions that can help the brethren in the lodges.
So it sounds kind of like your job goes from the sublime to the ridiculous. You're doing whatever paperwork for new initiates, and you're putting out fires in lodges that are having problems with the taxman. Is there sort of a what's the ratio there? Is it like half putting out fires and half stamping paperwork, or is it?
So I would say it's probably more putting out fires than it is paperwork. The paperwork, it's kind of like, my background, most people know that I'm a recovering lawyer. And, a lot of the things that lawyers do, a lot of the paperwork that lawyers do is forms, just, filling out names and stuff. And so a lot of the correspondence that we do is form correspondence, and that's pretty easy to do. It's the more, dealing with brothers who have issues, dealing with issues with the code, and quite frankly, for me, again, there's something kind of comes up new every day, which makes the job very interesting. There's new issues that come up every day, or new twists on issues that come up every day, and sometimes, sometimes I kick it up to the Grand Master and go, "Grand Master, here's the issue. We need a ruling from you." And a lot of times he'll tell me to kick it up to jurisprudence, and let's put all of our heads together and come up with an answer, because the code is very specific in some areas, and in some areas it's I find that there's some room for movement, or room for interpretation within the code.
So is your code what we refer to as our Constitution?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess I feel like I should mention that you're not flying solo in that office of yours there, right? There's 3 other people that work with you?
So I have two folks that are part-time. I have Clayton Levine, who is the Assistant Grand Secretary, Very Worshipful Clayton, and Clayton has been here for a little over a year. He does all of the out of jurisdiction correspondence. So if you need a certificate of good standing on a brother, or if you need something from some kind of correspondence from out of jurisdiction, he handles all of that for us. I've also got him working on several special projects, which one of them is going to be many years ago. I don't know if Very Worshipful David has been around this long, but many years ago there used to be a Secretary's Handbook that was published. And it hasn't been published for a long time, and the ones that I have are very, very out of date, considering all the changes that have been made. But I've got him working on doing that. I'm hoping by the end of this year or the beginning of next year, we will have something out for the secretaries. As a matter of fact, Matt, I've asked you to, when we get that, I think I've talked to you before about taking a look at that and making sure that we've kind of covered all the basics about being a secretary. I've also got Don Campbell. Don works 1 day a week, and as many of you know, Don has been around here for a long time. He was the assistant grand secretary for many years, and he comes in on Wednesdays and helps answer the phones and fields information from people that we get who are interested in becoming Masons and helps get them to the right people. Then I have Lynn Blaylock, who really does all the work around here. Her and Kathleen, both. Lynn is the office manager, and she kind of keeps me in line, and Kathleen does all of the accounting and the life memberships and everything like that. So they are a huge part of making this office run smoothly and hopefully at least seem to the brethren and to those who call here, make it run seamlessly. And then the newest addition to the office is a gentleman by the name of Connor. And Connor is basically my administrative assistant. He took the position that Chantal had for many years before she left. And Connor is a young man and is doing a tremendous job with doing all the administrative tasks, the filing, getting all the letters out, and everything like that. And he's going to be taking over more and more responsibility. He's only been here for about a little over a month. As a matter of fact, we had his 30-day evaluation the other day, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah, for a while, if the elections had gone a little differently in June, I would have had to feel like someone needed to change their name to the beginning with the letter C. Charles and Chris and Clint and Cameron and.
Well, we have quite a few, and we have Cameron Bailey and Clint Brown, so we have a couple of CBs too.
So thank you very much. This is the end of part one of our interview with Right Worshipful Brother Clint Brown, the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Washington. And part two will be up next week. We look forward to talking to you then. Thanks from the Working Tools Masonic Podcast.